Last 22nd, right now, the world is standing on the edge of a massive energy crisis. A single waterway, the Strait of Hormuz, has become the most dangerous flashpoint on Earth. What we are witnessing is not just a regional conflict. It is a global economic shock in real time. Oil is the backbone of the modern economy, and today, one of its most critical lifelines is under threat like never before. Main story: the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage between the Persian Gulf and the open ocean, carries nearly 20% of the world's oil supply. Every day, millions of barrels flow through it, connecting major producers like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait, and even Iran itself to global markets. But now, everything has changed. Since Iran began targeting vessels in the region, shipping traffic has been severely disrupted. In practical terms, the strait is no longer functioning normally. This has triggered what analysts are calling the largest oil supply shock in modern history. Exports through this route have dropped dramatically, in some estimates, by more than half. Iran itself continues limited exports, somewhere between 1 to 1.5 million barrels per day, but the overall flow has collapsed compared to normal levels. Global response: as oil prices surge, the United States is stepping in. President Donald Trump is reportedly considering aggressive options, including deploying thousands of Marines to the Middle East and even targeting Iran's key oil export infrastructure to force a reopening of the strait. But Iran is far from powerless. It has multiple ways to escalate the situation, from striking Gulf energy facilities to expanding attacks through allied groups like the Houthis, potentially targeting shipping routes in the Red Sea, the only alternative path for regional exports. Alternative routes limitations. There are limited workarounds, but none can fully replace the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia has an important backup system, the East-West Pipeline, which can transport oil from the eastern region to the Red Sea. It has a capacity of around 7 million barrels per day, though current usage is lower. The UAE also operates a pipeline that bypasses the strait with a capacity of roughly 1.5 to 1.8 million barrels per day. However, recent drone attacks near Fujairah port have already disrupted this route, highlighting how vulnerable these alternatives are. In short, even backup systems are under threat. Emergency measures. To stabilize markets, countries are turning to emergency reserves. The International Energy Agency, IEA, created after the 1973 oil crisis, has already announced the release of hundreds of millions of barrels from strategic reserves. But there's a problem. Even at maximum output, only about 2 to 3 million barrels per day can be added to the market. Meanwhile, the current disruption is estimated at nearly 10 million barrels per day. That leaves a massive supply gap. Other sources include China's large strategic reserves, Japan and South Korea's overseas storage, and even sanctioned Russian oil carried by what's known as a shadow fleet of tankers. In fact, the U.S. has reportedly allowed countries like India to temporarily purchase this sanctioned oil to ease pressure on global supply. Still, these are only temporary fixes, not long-term solutions. Worst-case scenario. According to energy analysts, we may already be living through a worst-case scenario. If attacks continue on oil infrastructure, especially in major producers like Saudi Arabia or the UAE, and repairs take weeks instead of days, markets could spiral into panic. We've seen this before. In 2019, when Saudi oil facilities were attacked, oil prices jumped by up to 25% in a matter of days. But at that time, quick repairs and strong communication calmed markets. Today, the situation is far more complex. If outages last longer, the price shock could trigger a global economic slowdown, or worse. Gulf countries' reaction. Gulf nations are now on high alert. Before this conflict escalated, countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE had pushed for de-escalation and diplomacy. They even stated that U.S. military bases on their soil would not be used to attack Iran. But the situation has shifted dramatically. Recent strikes targeting Gulf cities and infrastructure have changed the tone. Officials are now openly discussing defense strategies, including naval escort missions to protect oil tankers moving through dangerous waters. The language is also becoming more aggressive, with some leaders openly labeling Iran as a direct threat. Long-term impact. Even if the conflict ends tomorrow, the consequences will last for years. On the logistics side, Gulf countries are already planning Plan B, C, and even D, investing in alternative export routes, pipelines, and infrastructure to reduce reliance on the Strait of Hormuz. History offers a lesson. During the Iran-Iraq tanker war in the 1980s, Saudi Arabia built the East-West pipeline specifically to avoid such risks. Today, similar large-scale projects may emerge again. Countries like Qatar, heavily dependent on this route for gas exports, are now reconsidering their entire strategy. New pipelines, regional cooperation, and infrastructure diversification are likely to follow. Conclusion: strong outro. This is no longer just a regional conflict. It is a global energy crisis with the power to reshape alliances, economies, and the future of oil trade itself. The Strait of Hormuz has always been important, but now the world is learning a hard truth. When one narrow passage controls the flow of global energy, the entire world becomes vulnerable.